Alright, what showing you today is a chemical that when mixed with heavy oil, this is more than heavy oil, that's just flat out goop, it converts it to lighter oil. The first little test is in these two test tubes. I have 10.8 API oil here, and we have 20 milliliters of that oil here mixed with 2 milliliters of this chemical. Once the chemical mixes with the heavy oil, it completely homogenizes. There's no separation in there. There's nothing separated out. It's not like when you mix condensate with heavy oil. If you let it sit long enough, it's ultimately going to separate out. The heavy oil just suspends in the condensate. That's not what's happening here. What's happening here is when you mix this chemical with heavy oil, you literally, when you run the Sera analysis, you will see that you actually reduce the number of resins by somewhere between 15 to 20%. You reduce the number of ashphaltenes by 30 to 40%, and you increase the saturates by 20 to 30%, and you increase the aromatics by 10 to 15%. So you're reducing the heavy oils, the resins and the ashphaltenes, and you're increasing the saturates and the aromatics. So you're just making lighter oil. So just for a visual demonstration, I just want to show, we're going to lay these two down where you can see them. And just for a visual, I'm going to show you that when you lay down this heavy oil, it just takes a while before it flows. It doesn't flow very well. You can see it's kind of working its way up towards the lid. It's been a couple of seconds. We'll stand that up so we don't make too much of a mess in the jar. And then now we're going to take this lighter oil that we've mixed this chemical in. We're going to lay it down, and there it's at the lid. We're done. So we have literally lightened the oil. You see how much further that flowed? In a fraction of the time. So we just made lighter oil. You now have 15 to 16 API in this jar, and 10.8 is what we started with here. We haven't done the testing on this. It's being tested in the lab now, but we know from experience that you increase the API significantly, and depending on what your base oil is, if you start with 8, depending on what's in it, you might increase it to 14%. There's been times when it's almost doubled to 14 degrees API, and there's been times when it's almost doubled to 16. So from 8 to 16. So that's that. Now in these other test tubes, we started with a wax asphaltene mixture. This came out of a well that was getting cleaned. It was scraped out of the well, and it was dumped into a collection container. So you can see that's just goopy stuff. And that's what I have in this bottle here. And that stuff just typically doesn't flow. I don't know if we can speed it up here at all. So the sample of product is not moving, and I'm not sure if you can see it, if it's showing up yet, but I can see it here, that this is starting to move. You can see there it's covering more of the jar. This, well, I guess to be fair, we need to do it with both, and let's see what happens. I'm losing that. Well, there we go. This, you can see, is not moved at all. And this, you can see, is actually starting to move. This 20 milliliters of this mixed with 2 milliliters of this gives you a goopy product that actually, although not quickly, is flowing. And the cool part about this is when you now test this sample of wax or paraffins and ashphaltenes, you're not going to find traces of the chemical that have been mixed in with it. What you're going to simply find is just lighter oil. You're going to find paraffins that have been converted to saturates and aromatics. So I hope you find this interesting. This is the first time in, I think, the industry we've seen a chemical that does this. It's literally cold cracking in a jar. It's breaking the C30s. It's converting the C30s into lighter oil.